The rain sliced through the neon-lit streets of Seoul, each droplet a staccato against the asphalt. Ye Joon's car screeched to a halt in a deserted alley, and for the first time in years, his pulse betrayed him. He had thought danger was something he commanded, not something that could invade so suddenly. Patricia's voice cut through the night, steady but daring, asking him, calmly, almost innocently, to dance. He froze, the metallic scent of the city and something else, something intoxicating, filling his senses. That one invitation made the cold, calculated world he had built tremble, and in that split second, the empire and the man collided. But wait, here's where it gets complicated. What she didn't know and what he hadn't realized was that one simple dance could unravel everything he had ever protected, including himself. Before we dive deeper into this twisted, electrifying story, welcome to my channel. I'm thrilled to have you here. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single twist. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, Seoul, New York, Lagos, or somewhere else, because this story is going to take us places you did not expect. As the rain poured harder, Ye Joon's eyes locked on Patricia. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every forbidden impulse urged him forward. One dance, he thought. One dance might be the spark that ignites something irreversibly dangerous. The streets around them seemed to hold their breath, waiting. Ye Joon's gaze never left Patricia as she extended her hand, her confidence disarming and audacious. It wasn't the request itself, it was the audacity behind it. She didn't flinch, didn't glance around, didn't hesitate. In a world where most bowed or cowered, she dared to approach him. His hand hovered for a heartbeat over hers, a hesitant phantom of impulse. He wanted to deny her, to maintain the carefully constructed walls of his existence, yet every fiber of him longed to collapse under this unexpected gravity. The street lamps flickered above them, casting elongated shadows that danced with the puddles at their feet, and in that wavering light, Ye Joon felt something long forgotten stir. Memories he had buried deep, moments of trust shattered by betrayal, all surfaced with a pang of something dangerously akin to hope. Patricia's eyes, sharp, unwavering, unafraid, held him accountable for the man he claimed to be. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice measured yet brittle, betraying his internal discord. Her smile was infinitesimal but devastating. "I don't think you've ever danced, not really. Let me show you what it feels like." And just like that, she led him forward into a space that existed only between them. The world of neon and rain, of shadows and silent observers, shrank to the radius of her presence. Ye Joon's hands, the hands that had calculated every risk, every movement of men and money, trembled as he followed her lead. For a fleeting instant, the meticulous empire he had commanded felt irrelevant. But then, like an electric jolt, reality intruded. Dukwon, one of his most loyal and lethal lieutenants, appeared from the shadows. "Boss, you've got a problem." Dukwon's tone was clipped tense. Ye Joon's jaw tightened, a familiar coldness settling back over him like armor. Patricia noticed the shift immediately. Her fingers lingered on his hand, an anchor to something fragile, yet he had to respond to the storm brewing outside their delicate moment. "What is it?" Ye Joon asked, his voice low, imperious. "Siyu has been asking questions. Dangerous ones." "She's in the wrong company, boss," Dukwon replied. Every word was a dagger wrapped in silk. Ye Joon's mind raced. Siyu wasn't just a minor threat. She had the audacity to probe into the city's underbelly in ways that could unravel years of meticulous control. Patricia felt the tension radiating off him, and against every instinct that screamed caution, she squeezed his hand. Ye Joon's body stiffened. That simple touch, defiant yet tender, ignited a dissonance within him, a perilous mixture of desire and dread. But then the air shifted. A black sedan, sleek and anonymous, screeched around the corner. The tires spat shards of rainwater onto the pavement as its engine roared like a beast ready to pounce. Ye Joon's eyes narrowed. He knew that engine, that driving style, that reckless confidence. Kun. Always Hakkun. always at the periphery of his operations, always testing, always challenging, always threatening. Patricia's hand still rested lightly on his. "Who is that?" she whispered, curiosity tangled with caution. Ye Joon's fingers tightened imperceptibly over hers. "Someone who shouldn't exist right now," he said, the words barely audible over the rain and the approaching roar. In that instant the dance, once tender, intimate, transformative, shifted. It became a prelude to conflict, a collision of worlds she could not yet comprehend. Hakuin's car skidded to a halt, the door slamming with a metallic echo that resonated like a warning. The figure who emerged was unmistakable. Tall, calculated, with a grin that carried promises of chaos. "Ye Joon," Hakuin said, voice smooth yet laden with malice. "Thought you could enjoy your little fantasy without consequences?" Ye Joon's eyes hardened. He had always thrived on control, on the precision of every maneuver. Yet this intrusion shattered the fragile equilibrium Patricia had coaxed from him. He glanced at her, her gaze, unwavering, betrayed no fear, only unspoken questions. The contrast between her calm and Hakuin's predatory confidence made something surge within him, a combination of protective fury and forbidden intrigue. "Step aside, Patricia," he ordered softly, yet with an undertone that hinted at imminent violence. She didn't move. Her presence had become an anchor, a reminder that vulnerability could coexist with strength. She trusted him in a way few ever dared, and he could not abandon that. Hakuin smirked, unfazed. "Careful, Ye Joon. Even the strongest hearts can fracture when faced with desire and danger." His words were deliberate, sharp as obsidian, and they cut into the tension like a blade. Ye Joon's pulse quickened, his mind calculating, strategizing, but not just about survival. About Patricia. About the inexplicable pull she had initiated with one audacious, irreversible dance. Then, without warning, the world seemed to tilt. A flash of movement from the shadows, a figure Patricia had not seen, lunged toward Hakuin. A gun. A knife. The rain masked the detail, but the threat was tangible, immediate. Ye Joon reacted instinctively, moving between Patricia and the unknown assailant. Adrenaline surged, heart hammering, and the world around them became a blur of motion, tension, and barely contained emotion. But just as he deflected the attack, a new, staggering realization struck him. The person who had lunged wasn't an enemy. It was someone from his past, someone whose disappearance had been orchestrated years ago, someone he had believed gone forever. And now, here they were, entwined in the chaos of the present, their reappearance threatening not just the delicate dance of emotions he was navigating with Patricia, but the very empire he had fought to protect. The street seemed to hold its breath. Rain fell harder. Neon reflections quivered across puddles. Patricia looked up at Ye Joon, eyes wide, not with fear, but with the silent, pressing question. What had she truly stepped into? And Ye Joon, the man who thought his heart was gone, realized with a sudden, terrifying clarity. Nothing, no power, no control, no meticulously constructed empire, could prepare him for what was about to unfold. Ye Joon's breath hitched as the voice sank into his chest like a leaden weight. Patricia instinctively stepped closer, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he stiffened, every nerve coiled, as if decades of control and instinct converged into a singular, almost violent awareness. The figure from his past emerged fully from the shadows, rain glistening on dark clothing, eyes sharper than any blade Ye Joon had ever seen. "Do you remember the promise you made?" the figure murmured, a sentence deceptively soft yet laced with menace. Ye Joon's lips parted, searching for words, but none came. Every memory he had suppressed, every secret he had buried, surged forward with a clarity that was almost unbearable. Patricia's hand on his arm was a tether, grounding him in the now, yet the pull of history was magnetic. He hadn't anticipated this collision. Not from a stranger, not from a rival, not from someone he thought vanished without trace. His empire had always been built on anticipation, on foresight, on controlling every variable, but this was chaos incarnate, wrapped in a familiar face. Hakuin's grin widened as if he had rehearsed this exact moment for months. Ye Joon, he said, each syllable deliberate. I told you the past has a way of catching up. But I didn't expect it to catch you, like this. His words slithered into the night, insinuating, teasing. The interplay of menace and mockery made every heartbeat in Ye Joon's chest pound in unison with the rain. Patricia tilted her head, not in confusion but calculation. Who is that? She asked softly, though each word carried the weight of an unspoken challenge. Her voice, calm and deliberate, had an effect Ye Joon could not ignore. In her presence, every danger, every memory, every threat, took on a different hue. Sharper, more immediate, more dangerous, and yet more compelling. Ye Joon forced a controlled exhale. Someone I thought was gone. The words tasted like iron, heavy and unavoidable. And yet, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within. One of the ironies of his existence. He could command armies, manipulate outcomes, orchestrate violence with surgical precision. But here, in a single moment, he was unarmed against the past. But wait, here's where it gets more twisted. The person from his past wasn't just a memory. They carried knowledge, secrets that could unravel not only his empire but the fragile nascent connection he had begun to forge with Patricia. Ye Joon's mind raced through possibilities, each more perilous than the last, each demanding a choice that could redefine everything. Dakwon stepped closer, tension radiating from him in precise waves. Boss, they know more than they should. We can't let them. Not now, Ye Joon interrupted, voice tight but authoritative. His gaze flicked to Patricia. Stay close. She did, but without hesitation. Her presence was not a shield but a challenge. She refused to hide. She refused to be a passive witness. And that, more than anything, made his blood roar with protective fury and inexplicable fascination. The rain intensified, drumming against the asphalt in staccato chaos. Hakuin's smirk shifted subtly, a twitch that revealed anticipation. You always forget, he said almost conversationally, that power is temporary and memory is eternal. Ye Joon's jaw tightened. Memory. That one word carried the full weight of betrayal, ambition, and regret. It wasn't just the figure before him. It was what they represented. Unfinished business, secrets long concealed, and choices made in darkness that refused to stay buried. Suddenly, the figure moved faster than expected, closing the space between them in a heartbeat. A glint caught Ye Joon's eye. A device? A weapon? Something sharp and impossible to anticipate in that moment of sheer kinetic energy. He reacted instinctively, body moving in perfect, lethal synchronization. Dakwon's presence was peripheral but invaluable, yet even his skills couldn't neutralize the overwhelming precision of someone who had once been intimately familiar with every contingency Ye Joon had ever considered. But the true shock wasn't in the attack, it was in the figure's eyes. Recognition, yes, but also something else. A cruel delight, a knowledge that Ye Joon had underestimated. And then, with a voice that made the rain itself seem to hush, they said, Patricia, you're exactly why he'll fail. Ye Joon's pulse stuttered. He didn't just feel the danger of the moment. He felt the personal. Patricia. The pull she had exerted since that audacious dance now carried a weight far beyond flirtation or curiosity. She was a target, a variable, a threat to the equilibrium of the past and present colliding. He realized with chilling clarity. Protecting her could cost him everything, including the very power he had spent years consolidating. Hakuin laughed then, low and dangerous, a sound that slithered into Ye Joon's bones. Didn't think the boss would be so distracted, did you? One moment of weakness and the past arrives to remind you. Nothing is permanent. Especially love. Patricia stepped forward, not yielding, not begging, not pleading. Her presence was defiance incarnate. Ye Joon, you don't have to do this alone. The sincerity and boldness intertwined like fire and ice, and for a heartbeat, Ye Joon considered surrender. Not to the enemy, but to the emotion that had been growing inside him since their first dance. But the moment shattered. A sudden explosion from the far end of the alley. A fiery eruption of sound and debris shifted the balance completely. Dakwon yelled, taking cover. Hakuin's attention momentarily wavered. And Ye Joon realized something incomprehensible. The attack wasn't random. Someone else had entered the game. Someone who had been invisible, patient, orchestrating events from the shadows. The street blurred, chaos erupting around them. And yet, in the midst of it all, Patricia remained resolutely beside him. Her eyes fixed not on the flames, not on the threat, but on him. Ye Joon's mind raced. He was accustomed to orchestrating fear, to commanding respect, to predicting moves before they happened. But this was a confluence of past and present, of desire and peril, of power and vulnerability, that left him momentarily unmoored. The final, crushing realization hit him like the rain pounding the street. The person from his past, the resurgence of threats, Patricia's presence, they weren't just complications. They were a meticulously crafted trap, a labyrinth of intentions designed to test his capacity for control, loyalty, and heart. And then, as if the universe itself delighted in cruel timing, the figure from his past leaned close enough that Ye Joon could feel the weight of breath and whispered, "Do you remember the choice you made, the one that ruined everything?" The alley seemed to shrink around them, the rain intensified, the neon flickered like a heartbeat gone awry. Ye Joon knew, with a certainty that shook him to the core, that this confrontation would not end tonight. Not with Hakuin, not with the figure from his past, and not with Patricia in the eye of the storm. Ye Joon's instincts flared. He pivoted, positioning himself between Patricia and the shadowy figure, heart hammering against ribs that had long thought themselves unbreakable. The figure emerged from the darkness, tall, precise, and unervingly composed. The face was partially hidden beneath the hood, but the aura was unmistakable, trained, lethal, and intimately familiar. "You weren't supposed to meet her yet," the voice repeated, slow, deliberate, almost savoring the tension. Ye Joon's jaw tightened. How could anyone know Patricia's significance so quickly? Every calculation, every contingency he had ever rehearsed for enemies like Hakuin or Dakwon, fell short against this unknown variable. Patricia's gaze flickered between Ye Joon and the figure, unwavering, steady as if reading the situation faster than he could. "Explain," she demanded, voice low, demanding clarity in a moment designed to confuse. Ye Joon's mind raced. Explanation was dangerous, revelation riskier, yet truth was unavoidable. "She knows more than she should," he said, voice cold, taut with urgency. He glanced at the figure. "Step into the light." The figure complied, hood falling back, revealing a face that jolted Ye Joon like a physical blow. "You." His breath hitched. Siu had been presumed lost, gone from the tangled web of Seoul's underworld years ago. She had vanished in circumstances that had haunted him, disappearances he had orchestrated, disappearances that had been executed with surgical precision. Yet here she was, alive, poised, and dangerous beyond measure. Patricia blinked, unflinching. "You two know each other." Her tone wasn't accusatory but searching, curious, sharp. Ye Joon didn't answer. Not yet. His mind was a storm, cataloging possibilities, threats, and motives. Siu's reappearance wasn't just inconvenient, it was catastrophic. Her presence suggested planning, patience, an agenda that could dismantle everything he had built. Hakuin's laughter punctuated the tension like a blade slicing through silk. "Surprise, Ye Joon," he drawled. "I always say, the past doesn't just haunt, it orchestrates." Ye Joon's hands flexed, every muscle taut, but Patricia's presence beside him complicated the equation. Her calm defiance, the way she refused to be a mere observer, introduced variables he hadn't anticipated. His mind, usually a fortress of control, faltered in the presence of her audacity. Siu stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured. "You've forgotten what you promised me," she said, voice silk and steel intertwined. The words carried gravity, a weight that settled in Ye Joon's chest with unnerving precision. Memory surged not just of loss, but of decisions made under duress, of trust violated, of a bond that had once been everything, and now threatened to undo him. Patricia tilted her head slightly, curiosity burning. "What promise?" she asked softly, voice unflinching, a challenge wrapped in patience. Ye Joon's pulse stuttered. Her presence, steadfast, unyielding, was a stark contrast to the storm Cu represented, and in that duality, he felt a pull he could neither ignore nor control. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled, subtle at first, then violently. An explosion ripped through a nearby street, sending shards of debris scattering like lethal confetti. Dukwon cursed, diving to shield them both. Hakkun hissed, fury igniting in his eyes. "What the?" Ye Joon's head snapped toward the source. This wasn't random, it was orchestrated. Someone else had entered the equation, someone patient enough to wait for the perfect chaos. He realized with chilling clarity that the confrontation he had anticipated was only the surface. Beneath it lay a strategy designed to force his hand, to manipulate every choice he would make from here onward. Patricia's eyes met his. "Ye Joon, this isn't just about you," she said quietly. Her voice carried conviction, clarity, and an unspoken urgency. She wasn't a pawn, she was a catalyst. And suddenly that audacious dance, the one that had first fractured his defenses, felt insignificant compared to the maelstrom now swirling around them. Hakkun's smirk faltered slightly. "Careful," he warned, though even he seemed momentarily unprepared for the cascading chaos. "You think you've anticipated every move, but the board is bigger than you imagined." And Ye Joon, for the first time in decades, felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Not fear, not hesitation, but a tremor in the core of his control. Every instinct screamed to assert dominance, to retaliate, to strike before the storm struck him. Yet he hesitated, not from weakness, but from a dawning realization. Patricia wasn't just an element to protect. She was the key to surviving it all. Q's gaze hardened. "You think you can shield her from what's coming?" she asked, almost rhetorically. Her words carried more than a question. They were a statement, a challenge, a prophecy. "You've changed, Ye Joon. See it. And I'll exploit it." Ye Joon's eyes narrowed. Exploit. The word alone ignited a visceral response, not just protective but strategic. He had spent years perfecting control, mastering foresight, commanding fear. Yet now, with Patricia's defiance and Cus return, control was an illusion, fragile and fleeting. But just as he moved to assert dominance, to re-establish the equilibrium that had always defined him, a new sound cut through the chaos. A door slammed, a voice shouted, and the alley became an arena of unpredictable variables. Patricia stiffened beside him. "You weren't alone," she whispered. "There's someone else here." Ye Joon's instincts flared. He scanned the perimeter, assessing angles, calculating threats, noting shadows that moved with unnatural precision. Every calculation, every scenario he had rehearsed in countless contingency plans, was now obsolete. The past, the present, and the unpredictable convergence of human will collided in a single, searing instant. Then, in a motion so fluid it seemed choreographed, a third figure emerged. A silhouette neither friend nor clearly foe. Their presence demanded attention, commanded fear, yet carried an impossible familiarity. The rain, the neon, the chaos, all sharpened in focus. Ye Joon recognized immediately. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. Someone had designed this moment with precision, patience, and a purpose only they fully understood. Patricia's grip on his arm was subtle yet insistent, a reminder that in the vortex of threats, she was the constant. Ye Joon's mind raced. One choice could save her. One could preserve the fragile bonds he was beginning to trust. One could assert his empire. But no choice was without peril. And then, just as he began to act, the third figure stepped forward into the light. And Ye Joon froze. Breath caught, pulse spiking. The rain seemed to pause, the neon flickered, and in that suspended instant, the world contracted to a single terrifying truth. The chessboard he had always controlled was now being manipulated from every angle, and the next move could end everything. Ye Joon's mind raced, the word key reverberating like a bell in a cathedral of chaos. The figure's implication wasn't just a threat, it was a revelation, a puzzle wrapped in menace. Patricia's eyes narrowed, not in fear but in scrutiny, as though she were attempting to parse the intricate calculus of the moment in real time. She didn't flinch, didn't retreat, and the audacity of her presence was both disarming and alarming to Ye Joon. The third figure, shrouded in the dim neon glow, took a deliberate step forward. Their face remained obscured, but the aura of calculated control was unmistakable. Ye Joon's instincts screamed, each one a cold, precise warning honed by years of ruling Seoul's underworld. Yet no instinct, no experience, no strategy could have predicted this convergence. The past, the present, and an unknown variable colliding with lethal intent. But wait, here's where it gets even more complicated. The third figure wasn't alone. A subtle shift in the shadows revealed two more silhouettes, moving with predatory synchronization. They circled, not aggressively, not yet, but with the patient menace of predators that understood every possible reaction before it occurred. Ye Joon's eyes flicked to Dakwon, then Hakwon, assessing allies and threats alike. He had contingencies for almost everything, but this orchestrated chaos, defied expectation. Patricia's voice cut through the tension, crisp and unwavering. Ye Joon, you're calculating too much. Sometimes you need to act. The words weren't naive, they were a challenge. They weren't passive, they were incendiary. And for the first time since she had approached him with that audacious dance, Ye Joon considered that surrendering control, even temporarily, might be the only way to survive. Hakwon's smirk returned, but it wavered ever so slightly. "Careful, boss," he murmured, a rare note of caution threading his usual arrogance. "This isn't just about you anymore." His gaze swept over Patricia, then Siyu, then the third figure. "And it's certainly not about the rain or the alley." Ye Joon's pulse accelerated, awareness sharp as a blade. He calculated, precisely, ruthlessly, every option. Retreat was impossible. Attack could escalate disaster exponentially. He had one fleeting moment to decide. He looked at Patricia, her stance unwavering, her eyes daring him to act with courage, with decisiveness, with a kind of impulsive audacity that could either save or doom them all. "Move," he ordered quietly, but with authority. Dakwon and Hakwon flanked him, weapons ready, yet the subtle tension in the air suggested that physical force alone would be insufficient. The storm of rain amplified every sound, the patter on asphalt, the shuffling of feet, the whisper of breaths in the cold night air. It was almost cinematic, a cruel irony that in the midst of orchestrated chaos, the city itself seemed to amplify their peril. Siyu stepped closer to Ye Joon, her presence magnetic yet dangerous. "Do you even know what she is to them?" she asked, voice low but sharp, aimed at Patricia. Ye Joon's head snapped. "Don't," he began, but the words faltered. Patricia's expression was unreadable. She didn't flinch. She didn't cower. She simply stared, and the clarity in her eyes challenged every calculation he had ever made. The third figure moved again, breaking the fragile equilibrium. One step forward, deliberate, measured. And then, without warning, they produced an object small enough to be overlooked but lethal in implication. Ye Joon's trained eyes recognized it instantly. A tracking device, an encrypted detonator, a signal that could mobilize forces he hadn't even considered. Chaos was no longer a possibility. It was imminent. Ye Joon's mind looped rapidly through contingencies, each scenario more perilous than the last. He had planned for betrayal, for assassination, for the collapse of alliances, but he hadn't planned for this orchestrated convergence. Past enemies, present chaos, and Patricia, whose audacity had shattered every expectation he had ever held. "Boss," Dakwon hissed, "we can't fight them all. Someone's controlling this." Ye Joon's gaze narrowed, intensity crystallizing into strategy. "Then we don't fight them all. We fight the variable." He turned to Patricia. "Stay close. Follow my lead. Trust me, but be ready to act independently." Her response was subtle yet incendiary. I don't follow blindly. I act with purpose. The words were both affirmation and challenge, and for Ye Joon, the paradox was intoxicating. Her presence demanded both protection and respect, complicating every instinct he had honed over decades. The rain intensified, obscuring vision, heightening the tension. Hakuin's movements became deliberate, testing the perimeter, seeking advantage, but Ye Joon's mind remained fixed on the third figure and Cu. Every second was amplified, every gesture, every breath, every reflection on wet asphalt a potential pivot in an unfolding catastrophe. But the real shock was yet to come. A sudden movement behind Cu, subtle yet rapid, drew Ye Joon's attention. Before he could react, Cu's expression shifted from calculation to incredulity. The figure behind her wasn't a subordinate. It was someone Ye Joon had sworn was neutralized years ago, someone whose betrayal had nearly destroyed his empire. And now, in the storm-drenched alley, they moved with lethal precision, confronting Cu in a way that threatened to obliterate the delicate balance of alliances and enmities alike. Ye Joon reacted instantly, stepping between them with a fluidity honed by decades of survival. He intercepted the motion, deflecting the assailant, but not before the person whispered something that froze him in place. You've been too careful, Ye Joon. Too controlled. And now she'll pay for it. Patricia's grip on his arm was firm, steady, a tether against the chaos. Ye Joon, you need to act, she urged, voice sharp and compelling. The urgency was undeniable, and he realized that inaction wasn't just dangerous, it was catastrophic. Then, in a moment of cruel irony, the neon lights flickered and the rain intensified as though nature itself was conspiring against them. Hakuin's voice broke through, low and dangerous. You've underestimated the past. You always do. Ye Joon's mind spiraled through the options, every calculation taunting him with the impossibility of perfect strategy. Yet through the storm, through the chaos, through the orchestrated convergence of past and present enemies, he caught Patricia's gaze, undaunted, fierce, and unyielding. In that instant he understood. The choice he would make in the next seconds wouldn't just determine survival. It would define everything. Ye Joon froze, his mind snapping into hyperdrive. Patricia's hand trembled slightly, the detonator glinting under the neon haze. The sound of the metallic click reverberated like a gunshot, slicing through the chaos around them. Rain hammered the asphalt, drumming over his thoughts, yet the weight of the moment was unbearable. The detonator in her hand wasn't just a threat, it was the key to everything he had fought to control. Patricia's eyes met his, unwavering. I didn't know, she said, voice tight with urgency. I thought it was just a tool they left behind. I didn't mean. Ye Joon's instinct was immediate. Shield her, neutralize the threat, assess the chaos. But the alley was no longer a simple battlefield. It had become a labyrinth of unpredictable variables. Cu's gaze was calculating, Hakuin's smirk sharpened, Dukwon poised like a coiled predator. And the third figure, whose motives remained shrouded in mystery, advanced with relentless precision. Step back, Ye Joon commanded, voice low but authoritative, as if the simple act of speaking could impose order on the maelstrom. Patricia didn't move. Her defiance was quiet but palpable, an unspoken challenge that simultaneously threatened and compelled him. Hakuin chuckled, a sound that carried amusement and menace in equal measure. Interesting, he said, voice dripping with provocation. You always keep secrets, Ye Joon. But never the ones that hurt you the most. Ye Joon's jaw tightened. Secrets had always been his armor, but here they were potential executioners. And yet, in that storm, in that fleeting, impossible instant, he realized something he hadn't admitted even to himself. He had underestimated Patricia. She wasn't just a variable, she was a catalyst. And catalysts had a way of rewriting equations entirely. But then, the world shifted in a way that no calculation could have anticipated. Cu moved with a lethal grace, aiming not for him, but for Patricia. Her expression was unreadable, her intent a blade hidden behind the veneer of reason. Ye Joon lunged instinctively, intercepting the motion. his body a blur honed by decades of survival. The rain glistened on his skin, mixing with the adrenaline that surged through every muscle, every nerve. "Move!" he barked at Patricia, and for once, she obeyed without hesitation, sidestepping with agility that belied the chaos surrounding them. But even as she moved, Hakuin advanced, exploiting the distraction. His presence a menacing reminder that every second was a potential death sentence. Then came the explosion. Sudden, deafening, merciless. A car at the alley's entrance erupted into fire, sending shards of metal and debris into the stormy night. Dakwon cursed, grabbing Patricia and flinging her to cover, while Ye Joon propelled himself toward the source, every sense screaming danger, every instinct screaming control. But the twist, oh the twist, was merciless. The detonator in Patricia's hand wasn't a passive device. It was active. The digital display blinked ominously, a countdown that had already begun. Ye Joon's eyes widened as he realized. Someone had rigged the detonator remotely, feeding a signal that only Patricia could unknowingly transmit. He moved faster than thought, wrapping his hands around hers, overriding the device, feeling the subtle vibrations of impending catastrophe under his fingertips. Patricia's breath hitched, fear and awe mingling, as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. Hakuin's voice cut through, laced with mockery and disbelief. "Surprised, Ye Joon. Even the best can be blindsided when desire clouds judgment. And you've been blinded for months." Ye Joon's mind pivoted, fast and ruthless. Desire had indeed been the vulnerability, but precision, control, and ruthless instinct were his weapons. He flung the detonator aside, redirecting its trajectory into a puddle of water, short-circuiting the device just in time. Sparks hissed, smoke rose, and for a heartbeat, time seemed suspended. Patricia's eyes met his, wide with unspoken questions and newfound respect. Ye Joon didn't answer verbally. Instead, he drew her closer, shielding her with the precision of a predator who understood that survival was the calculus of proximity and timing. But the storm wasn't over. Siyu and the third figure were closing in, each movement deliberate, coordinated, threatening to collapse the fragile bubble of safety around them. Ye Joon's senses sharpened, every thought focused, every reflex primed. "Dakwon," he growled, voice taut, "cover Patricia. Now." Dakwon didn't hesitate, positioning himself strategically, weapons drawn, scanning for threats. Hakuin's grin faltered, frustration edging into the corners of his composure. He hadn't anticipated Ye Joon's adaptation, nor the sheer audacity of Patricia's presence amidst this maelstrom. And then came the loop, the cruel reiteration of chaos. A sudden shadow from above, a silvery blur descending rapidly. Ye Joon intercepted instinctively. Another assailant, another threat, another reminder that control was ephemeral in this city. Patricia ducked, narrowly avoiding a lethal strike. Rain mixed with sparks from damaged electrical lines, turning the alley into a phantasmagorical nightmare of danger and beauty intertwined. Ye Joon's eyes darted, calculating angles, predicting trajectories, reading movements like an open book of chaos. He realized something extraordinary. The third figure was not acting alone. They were orchestrating every element with precision, exploiting past grievances, present distractions, and the unpredictable force that was Patricia. And here came the kicker, the twist that no calculation could account for. The detonator had been a decoy. Its true purpose wasn't destruction. It was a signal. And in that instant, Ye Joon's peripheral vision caught the unmistakable flash of movement from the alley behind them. A convoy of black sedans, engines idling, weapons visible through tinted windows, a force poised to descend on them with ruthless efficiency. Ye Joon's chest tightened. He had survived countless assassinations, betrayals, and conspiracies. He had commanded fear across the city. But this convergence of past, present, love, and chaos, was unlike anything he had ever faced. The storm wasn't just external. It had infiltrated the very core of his life, challenging every instinct, every calculation, every emotional barricade he had erected. Patricia's hand found his again, steady, unwavering. "We can't stay here," she said. Her voice wasn't fear, it was determination. And in that moment, Ye Joon realized she wasn't just a catalyst. She was an equal in the equation, a force that could tip the balance between survival and annihilation. He nodded subtly, a silent agreement, and turned to face the encroaching threat. Hakuin's smirk was gone, replaced with the faintest shadow of respect, or perhaps calculation. Siu's gaze hardened, narrowing the options with silent precision. The third figure, enigmatic and lethal, remained poised, a final puzzle piece in the nightmarish tableau. Ye Joon inhaled deeply, the rain washing over him, adrenaline coursing through every fiber of his being. He understood now. The next move would define not just survival, but the fragile, incendiary connection he had with Patricia, the loyalty of allies, and the fragile integrity of an empire built on fear and respect. And then, in the final merciless beat of suspense, a figure detached itself from the shadows, a silhouette neither friend nor clearly foe. They moved toward Patricia with lethal intent, and before Ye Joon could react, the figure whispered, voice icy, deliberate, and horrifyingly calm. "She's the reason everything collapses tonight, and you'll watch it happen." Ye Joon's heart slammed in his chest. The microchip. He felt its weight before he even saw it. Tiny, unassuming, yet capable of unleashing chaos that could unravel everything he had built. Patricia froze, her hand instinctively moving toward it, but Ye Joon was faster. His fingers clasped hers, not just to stop her, but to ground her, to tether her to the only lifeline in a storm that had become unrelenting. "Stay calm," he commanded, voice low but resonant, each word a thread trying to weave order into chaos. "Do not touch it. Do not react. Trust me." Her gaze met his, a mix of fear, awe, and defiance. "Trust you," she whispered, incredulous yet unwilling to step back. Her voice carried weight, a silent challenge he couldn't ignore. Ye Joon exhaled, acknowledging that she wasn't just a catalyst. She was a variable he couldn't control, a force he couldn't suppress, and yet a power he desperately needed. Sue's expression darkened, the rain streaking her features like war paint. "Do you see now?" she murmured, her voice slicing through the tension. "This isn't just a game of survival. This is a game of manipulation. Every step, every move, every breath is orchestrated." Ye Joon's gaze flicked to her, calculating, processing. Siu had always been methodical, precise, and ruthless. But now she had allies, or at least accomplices, whose intentions were hidden beneath layers of deceit. The third figure, whose motives had been murky, moved with predatory elegance, every step measured, every glance intentional. Hakuin's voice rang out, sharp and taunting. "You think you can anticipate it all, Ye Joon? The city, the empire, the streets, they're bigger than your calculations. And the heart? The heart is always the weakness." The words hit, unrelenting, because Hakuin was right. Desire had always been Ye Joon's flaw, and Patricia had become the focal point of that vulnerability. Yet, for all the risk she represented, for all the unpredictability she embodied, he couldn't deny it. She had awoken something in him that even years of empire and violence hadn't. But wait, here's where it gets insane. The microchip wasn't just a device. Its purpose was multidimensional. Ye Joon realized in a horrifying instant that it could override weapon systems, trigger covert strikes across the city, and transmit real-time data that would make them all pawns in a game far beyond Seoul. He had survived countless attempts on his life, but this was a networked assault, a symphony of destruction hidden within a fragment no bigger than a coin. Dakwon's hands twitched near his sidearm. "Boss, it's everywhere," he muttered, voice trembling as he assessed the impossibility of the threat. "It's not just here. It's the entire city grid." Ye Joon's mind whirled, each thought cascading into another, loops of strategy intersecting with instincts he hadn't realized he'd relied on for decades. He had one chance, one fleeting razor-thin chance, to neutralize the threat while protecting Patricia, maintaining dominance, and preventing total chaos. Patricia's hand shifted, almost imperceptibly. Ye Joon noticed. His reflexes screamed. He moved, guiding her hand away from her coat pocket, securing the microchip. Her eyes widened, a flash of panic mingled with trust, the kind that was forged not through words but through survival instincts and shared chaos. And then the alley erupted. CU and the third figure struck simultaneously, a coordinated assault so fluid it seemed choreographed. Ye Joon moved faster, intercepting blows, redirecting momentum, but the rain, the debris, the chaos around them created an environment of pure, unpredictable danger. Patricia moved alongside him, her agility and fearlessness surprising even him. She wasn't just surviving, she was participating, shaping the battle with instinctual precision. HartlessKorean shouted, "Boss! They're trying to split you." His voice was urgent, but Ye Joon barely heard it. His entire focus was on the convergence. CU, the third figure Patricia, and the microchip that could annihilate everything he had built in minutes. Ye Joon lunged, spinning, redirecting an assailant's momentum. His body a blur, but the third figure was relentless. Every step, every parry, every calculation was countered, matched, anticipated. The alley became a storm of movement, a dance of violence and precision, each participant a note in a symphony of controlled chaos. But here's the real kicker. In the midst of this battle, a new variable appeared, someone Ye Joon hadn't anticipated. A figure from his inner circle, presumed loyal beyond doubt, emerged from the shadows, weapon-trained, and aimed not at the enemies, but at him. Betrayal, like a blade, carved into the foundation of his control. Ye Joon's eyes widened. Loyalty, the one thing he had always counted on, was now fractured. The inner circle member's face was twisted in conflicting emotions. Fear, hesitation, ambition. In that instant, Ye Joon realized the stakes had escalated beyond strategy and violence. Trust itself had become a battlefield. Patricia's voice cut through, calm yet urgent. "Ye Joon, behind you." Her warning was instinctive, precise. He pivoted just in time, deflecting the weapon aimed at him. But the act revealed another danger, the microchip. Its presence now became a vector, a means to manipulate, control, and destroy at will. The rain poured harder, lightning splitting the sky above, illuminating the chaos in fleeting, violent snapshots. The city itself seemed complicit, a backdrop to the human storm that had engulfed them. Ye Joon realized then that survival would require not just strength, skill, and instinct, but audacity, unpredictability, and trust. A paradoxical combination he had rarely relied on, and never in such stakes. His voice rang out, sharp and cold. "This ends tonight, Ye Joon. You either control the chaos, or it controls you." Ye Joon's pulse quickened. He glanced at Patricia, at Dukwon, at HartlessKorean, assessing allies and enemies alike. The equation was impossible, yet clarity struck like lightning. The microchip, the past, the betrayal, the enemies. None of it could dictate the next move. Only audacity could. Only instinct could. Only trust in the unlikeliest ally, Patricia, could tip the balance. And then came the moment of pure cinematic terror. The microchip activated. Not in her hand, not remotely, but embedded deep within the coat. A sudden, high-pitched signal filled the alley. Electronic tendrils racing invisibly toward infrastructure, weapon systems, communications, a city-wide cascade of potential destruction. Ye Joon's eyes narrowed. He lunged for Patricia, trying to isolate the device, but CU intercepted, forcing them both into a collision of bodies, rain, and friction that sent sparks literally flying from broken neon wires. The distorted voice echoed, metallic and cold, sending a chill down Ye Joon's spine. Patricia's hand trembled under his grip, but her eyes, unwavering, fierce, and burning with curiosity, met his. "Ye Joon, what do we do?" she asked, voice barely audible over the storm, over the chaos, over the hiss of electricity from severed neon lines. Ye Joon's mind raced. Calculations, contingencies, reflexes, all screamed that there was no clean solution. No escape without danger. No maneuver without risk. And yet, instinct burned brighter than calculation. Survival depended on audacity, on action, on trusting the unlikeliest of allies in the storm of impossibility. "Listen to me," he said, voice low but commanding, each word sharpened by urgency. "We move. We trust no one but ourselves. Stay close, do exactly what I do, and don't, under any circumstances, touch the device again." Patricia nodded, understanding the gravity, yet defiance flickered in her eyes. She wasn't passive. She was a force of her own, a variable he hadn't predicted, and in that realization, Ye Joon recognized something dangerous: admiration for audacity. Hakuin moved to flank them, yet even he seemed caught off guard, the chaos unraveling the threads of loyalty he had counted on. Dukwon's hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed the weight of what was unfolding: a city teetering on the edge, enemies converging, and a threat that defied all precedent. But wait, here's where it gets absolutely insane. The alley split ahead, an abandoned warehouse looming like a shadowed fortress. Ye Joon knew instinctively this was no accident. Someone had designed the terrain to funnel them here, to amplify vulnerability, to test instincts. Every step they took now was a calculated gamble, and the storm above seemed to mirror the turbulence below, lightning splitting the sky as though mocking their precarious position. Patricia's voice, steady now, cut through the storm. "Where are we going?" "Inside," Ye Joon said sharply. "We need cover, leverage, and time." His gaze swept the alley, calculating angles, exits, and threats. The warehouse wasn't just shelter. It was a battlefield, a trap, and a theater where survival and strategy would collide violently. As they entered, the interior was pitch black, shadows twisting along rusted machinery, broken crates, and dangling chains. The only illumination came from flickering neon from a cracked window and the intermittent lightning outside. The storm had become a co-conspirator, amplifying tension, sound, and fear. Sue's voice echoed from the shadows, deliberate and tantalizing. "You think you can hide. You think you can control the outcome. The night has already been written, Ye Joon. Every step you take only fulfills my design." Ye Joon's pulse surged. Design. Orchestrated chaos. Every detail he had considered, every threat he had neutralized, now revealed as merely a prelude to a greater, more precise orchestration. And in that realization, the enormity of their predicament crystallized. They were trapped in a storm of human will, technology, and cunning that could outmaneuver even his mastery of fear. But the twist, oh, the twist was merciless. From above, a rope swung down, almost imperceptible in the dim light. A figure descended, landing with silent precision behind Patricia. Ye Joon lunged, but the figure was fast, anticipatory, and even his reflexes were tested to the edge. "Ye Joon, stop," Patricia hissed, grabbing his arm. Her grip was firm, resolute, yet tinged with urgency. "It's a trap. Not just for you, but for all of us." He hesitated milliseconds, but that was all it took. Siu emerged from the shadows, moving with lethal grace, blocking his path. The warehouse had become a chessboard, every square a trap, every piece. Enemy, ally, variable, positioned with precision he couldn't ignore. Hakuin's voice, sharp and almost gleeful, cut through the tension. "Welcome to the final movement, Ye Joon. The city doesn't care who survives. Only that the game continues." Ye Joon's mind looped frantically. Every escape route had been anticipated. Every ally compromised. The microchip's threat loomed like a sword over their heads, capable of detonating chaos at any second. And yet, in the midst of impossible odds, clarity struck like lightning. Action wasn't enough. He needed audacity, improvisation, and a willingness to embrace chaos itself. Dukwon shifted, alerting Ye Joon to movement behind crates, an ambush forming. He gestured subtly, signaling that survival would require coordination, trust, and instinctive precision. Ye Joon's gaze flicked to Patricia. She mirrored his movements, a partner in instinct and strategy, fearless despite the lethal unpredictability around them. Then came the first CTA, strategically placed for the viewers. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. You don't want to miss what's about to unfold. Patricia's hand brushed against a control panel nearby. Ye Joon noted it instantly, aware of every variable. She didn't touch anything yet, but the proximity suggested either an opportunity or a trap. Every instinct screamed caution, every experience screamed calculation, but he couldn't ignore the possibility. She was becoming an equal agent of chaos in the storm, a variable he had to trust and manage simultaneously. Suddenly, the microchip beeped, a subtle, sharp warning that it had detected movement. The figure who had planted it, unknown and unseen, was remotely monitoring every heartbeat, every motion. Ye Joon's eyes narrowed. The storm outside was mirrored inside. The threat was omnipresent, omniscient, and lethal. His voice rose, a crescendo of menace and precision. You've always controlled fear, Ye Joon. But now you're merely reacting to it. Every choice you make, every breath, every calculation. It's exactly what I predicted. Ye Joon inhaled, awareness sharpened to the edge of perception. He moved swiftly, intercepting a blow aimed at Patricia, pivoting and creating a momentary opening. The warehouse trembled with their confrontation. Metal, rain, and human force intertwined in a dance as lethal as it was precise. Hakuin's voice cracked with tension. You're outnumbered, boss. She's part of it now. Do you see it? The past isn't gone, it's orchestrated this. But here's the loop, the unpredictable cycle. Patricia, under Ye Joon's guidance, stepped into the fray, disarming one assailant with audacious precision. Ye Joon blinked. She wasn't just surviving. She was altering the battle, recalibrating the equations he had thought unassailable. Then came the final shock for this segment. A hidden door creaked open, revealing a dark figure with a handgun trained squarely on them. The rain, the storm, the chaos outside. It all seemed insignificant against the threat now visible, tangible, and imminent. Ye Joon's gaze locked on the figure, calculating trajectory, intent, and timing. His mind looped through centuries of instinct, strategy, and survival. The storm outside raged, but the storm inside the warehouse had become personal, intimate, and utterly unforgiving. Time slowed. Ye Joon's vision narrowed, the sound of rain outside blending with the metallic hiss of the warehouse into a single, deafening pulse. The bullet hurtled toward Patricia, a silver streak in the storm's chaos. He lunged instinctively, a pivot of muscle, instinct, and adrenaline honed over decades, intercepting the trajectory by the narrowest margin. Patricia stumbled, heart pounding, yet didn't cry out. Instead, her eyes met his, wide and unflinching, and in that gaze, Ye Joon realized something remarkable. She wasn't afraid of survival alone. She was unafraid of him, of the storm, and most dangerously, unafraid of the chaos itself. His voice cut through the tension like a blade. You think protecting her will save you, Ye Joon? The storm isn't just outside. It's inside, it's around you, and it's in every choice you've ever made. Ye Joon pivoted, intercepting another strike from an unknown assailant. Then another. Dakwon and Hakuin flanked him, weapons drawn, yet the pressure was relentless. He realized the pattern now. Each assault, each strike, each calculated move wasn't just random. It was choreographed, designed to test him, to push him to a breaking point, to exploit the one vulnerability he had never fully acknowledged. His heart. And then, here comes the first crazy twist for this segment. The hidden shooter, the one who had fired at Patricia, stepped forward, removing a mask, and Ye Joon froze. The face wasn't an enemy. It was someone he had trusted implicitly. Someone who had never faltered in loyalty. Until now. Dakwon's eyes widened. Hakuin cursed under his breath. Patricia gasped. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was seismic. Ye Joon, the figure said, voice calm but lethal. You've built an empire on fear, on calculation, but you never calculated her. The words struck like bullets themselves. Ye Joon's mind looped frantically, analyzing, calculating, and racing through decades of experience. The figure raised the gun again, but it wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at Patricia. And suddenly, every loop, every calculation, every contingency collapsed into a single impossible choice. Save her or preserve the empire he had fought to maintain. Patricia's hand brushed against Ye Joon's arm, subtle yet incendiary. "We don't have a choice," she said softly, almost whispering, almost daring. Her audacity shocked him, yet in that audacity, Ye Joon saw possibility. Unexpected, unpredictable, and terrifyingly compelling. Hakuin's voice, tense and nearly breathless, cut through the charged silence. "Boss, if you make the wrong move, everything collapses. The city, the network, your control, it's all gone. Are you ready?" Ye Joon didn't answer. Words were unnecessary. Actions mattered. And the storm, both outside and inside, was reaching a crescendo. But wait, here's where it gets wild. Patricia acted first. In a split second, she lunged, grabbing the hidden shooter's wrist, twisting and forcing the gun downward. Ye Joon seized the moment, moving with precision, disabling the assailant with a combination of skill and instinct that only decades of survival could teach. Yet the warehouse wasn't secure. From the shadows, Cu and the third figure advanced, relentless and precise. The microchip's presence pulsed like a countdown, the threat of citywide catastrophe looming over every move. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became a calculation with mortal stakes. Patricia staggered back but didn't retreat. "Ye Joon, this isn't over. We're in deeper than we thought." Her voice carried both warning and promise. Ye Joon's pulse quickened. She was more than a variable, she was the pivot, the catalyst, the element that could tip the balance in either direction. Ye Joon's eyes flicked to the microchip, then to Cu, then to the unknown third figure. Each presented imminent danger. Each demanded audacity, precision, and instinct. He realized then that survival wouldn't be about control. It wouldn't be about calculation. It would be about improvisation, about embracing chaos, about trusting Patricia in ways he had never trusted anyone. He moved swiftly, ducking under a swinging chain, redirecting an assailant's momentum, all while Patricia mirrored his movements. Together, they became a symphony of violence and instinct, an unplanned choreography in the eye of the storm. Hakuin's voice rose, taunting yet awed. "Ye Joon, I've never seen you like this. You're alive in ways I didn't know you could be. But for how long?" Dukwon's warning came next. "Boss, more are coming. The alley, the city. The storm, it's converging on us. We don't have much time." Ye Joon's eyes narrowed. Time was irrelevant. Space was irrelevant. Only action mattered. And then, in a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, he realized the final horrifying truth. The microchip wasn't just a weapon. It was a beacon, a lure designed to test not just him, but Patricia, their bond, and every choice that had led them here. If this story has you on the edge, smash that like button and comment part 2. If you want to see how Ye Joon and Patricia survive this chaos. You don't want to miss what happens next. The storm outside intensified, lightning splitting the sky, thunder echoing like a drumroll of fate. Ye Joon pivoted again, disarming an assailant with fluid precision, while Patricia moved with him, anticipating threats, redirecting chaos, and shockingly creating opportunities in the midst of lethal danger. Sue's voice, cold and precise, rang out. "Do you really think you can survive this, Ye Joon? Your world is unraveling, your allies are compromised, and your heart, your most fragile asset, is exposed. She is both the key and the collapse." Ye Joon's mind snapped into clarity. She, the audacious, unpredictable, fearless Patricia, was the only variable that could save them. And yet she was also the reason everything could fall apart. Every instinct screamed danger. Every emotion screamed desire. Every calculation screamed survival. Then, from above, the warehouse rafters groaned ominously. A sudden movement, almost imperceptible, revealed another hidden assailant, ready to strike. Ye Joon lunged, but the twist, merciless and brilliant, was that the attack wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at both of them simultaneously, a test of trust, instinct and connection. Ye Joon's grip on Patricia tightened instinctively. Every muscle was coiled, every sense screaming that the warehouse had transformed into a death trap. Sparks erupted from the cracked neon lights above, sizzling against metal beams, sending brief, strobing illumination across the chaos. The storm outside mirrored the chaos within, a symphony of unpredictability, danger, and adrenaline. Patricia's breath hitched, but her eyes, fierce and unflinching, met his. Ye Joon, what now? He didn't answer. Actions mattered more than words. His gaze flicked to the shadows where the new figure had appeared, a silhouette obscured by darkness, holding a device that hummed with ominous energy. The microchip in Patricia's coat pulsed faintly, a signal that intertwined with the new device. Ye Joon realized in a jarring instant. This wasn't just a trap. It was an elaborate test, designed not merely to challenge survival, but to probe fear, desire, and loyalty simultaneously. Hakuin whispered behind him, voice taut with tension. Boss, they're orchestrating everything. Every step, every beat, every heartbeat. They're watching, predicting, controlling. Ye Joon's eyes narrowed. The storm outside was irrelevant. The real tempest was human ingenuity combined with lethal technology. Survival now depended on precision, instinct, and audacity beyond reckoning. He pivoted, moving in fluid, practiced motion, intercepting a blow from the hidden assailant. Patricia mirrored him, sidestepping, anticipating, and countering in perfect unison. But then came the twist, the merciless, audacious twist that jolted the battlefield into a new dimension. The figure holding the device activated it. A pulse surged through the warehouse, sending machinery into frenzied motion. Chains swung like pendulums of death, sparks erupted in showers, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. Ye Joon's mind raced. The device wasn't just a weapon. It was a city-wide disruptor, capable of collapsing communication networks, weapon systems, and infrastructure in seconds. Patricia's eyes widened. It's worse than I thought, she murmured, and in that instant, Ye Joon realized she wasn't speaking just of technology. She was acknowledging the stakes of their connection, their trust, and the uncharted territory of chaos they were navigating together. Su's voice cut sharply through the storm, echoing with precision and menace. You've always relied on fear, Ye Joon. But now it's amplified, mirrored, and weaponized against you. The city isn't your ally. It's a stage for the inevitable collapse. Ye Joon pivoted, intercepting a swing from a steel chain aimed at Patricia, deflecting it with precise timing. Dakwon and Hakuin flanked them, creating a temporary shield, but the threat was relentless. Every corner, every shadow, every flicker of light was a potential ambush. And here comes the loop, the unpredictable cycle that kept the story on the razor's edge. Just as Ye Joon neutralized one threat, another emerged from the shadows. The warehouse wasn't a trap in the conventional sense. It was a living, breathing mechanism of chaos, designed to keep them on the edge of instinct, fear, and unrelenting pressure. Ye Joon's pulse surged. He realized that the hidden figure wasn't acting alone. Someone else orchestrated this. Someone capable of anticipating every move, every reflex, every human vulnerability. And then the horrifying realization struck him. The storm outside wasn't just a natural occurrence. It had been timed, orchestrated, to mirror and amplify the tension, to create sensory overload that would fracture even the most disciplined mind. Patricia's hand brushed against his again, subtle yet incendiary. Ye Joon, we have to act, she said. Her audacity shocked him, yet in that shock, a dangerous clarity emerged. She wasn't just surviving. She was shaping the battle, creating openings, and forcing Ye Joon to adapt in ways he hadn't anticipated. The hidden figure raised the device again, and the microchip pulsed in response. The warehouse hummed with electrical energy, machinery groaning under pressure, chains swinging like lethal pendulums, and sparks raining like a storm of fire. Every second stretched, every heartbeat amplified, every movement became a negotiation with death itself. Hakuin shouted, "Boss! It's collapsing. The structure, the floor, it won't hold." Ye Joon's gaze flicked upward. Beams above creaked under the strain, threatening to fall. The warehouse had become a trap within a trap, an infernal crucible designed to test every instinct, every reflex, every emotional attachment. Patricia moved beside him, instinct and courage guiding her. "We can't stay here. We have to reach the upper floor, the control room. It's the only way to disable the device." Ye Joon nodded, silently acknowledging that every step was a calculated risk. The path was narrow, perilous, and lined with threats, both visible and invisible. They moved, ducking, twisting, and leaping over debris, navigating a labyrinth of danger that seemed to respond to their every move. Then came the cinematic moment of audacity. Ye Joon propelled himself onto a swinging chain, using momentum to knock the hidden assailant off balance. Patricia followed with equal skill, her movements precise, fearless, almost choreographed in perfect harmony with him. But the twist, the merciless, shocking twist, was that the control room was locked, electronically sealed, and rigged with another device. Ye Joon's pulse quickened as he realized. The hidden figure wasn't just testing them. It was controlling the battlefield, manipulating the environment, and turning survival into a puzzle with deadly stakes. Seo's voice echoed, chillingly calm. "You've come this far, Ye Joon, but the final move isn't yours. It's hers, or she fails and everything collapses." Ye Joon glanced at Patricia. Her eyes were resolute, focused, and daring. She was no longer just a catalyst, she was the linchpin. And in that realization, the boundaries between fear, desire, and survival blurred. Ye Joon's fingers brushed Patricia's as she worked the control panel. Sparks from the failing lights flickered across their faces, and the microchip's pulse grew stronger, an ominous heartbeat that seemed to echo through the warehouse, through the city, and through Ye Joon's very chest. "Almost there," Patricia muttered, her voice steady but laced with tension. The device was sophisticated, but her hands moved with confidence, defiance, and audacious determination that startled even Ye Joon. She wasn't just a participant. She was a linchpin, the only variable capable of manipulating the chaos in their favor. Seo's voice echoed from the shadows, precise and cold. "Do you really think you can control it, Ye Joon? Or do you hope she can?" Ye Joon's pulse quickened. The words weren't just taunts. They were a calculation, a psychological strike, designed to destabilize him at the worst possible moment. But he didn't falter. He crouched behind a rusted crate, observing the environment, scanning angles, anticipating threats, calculating probabilities that would make even the most seasoned strategist dizzy. Hakuin shouted from the rear. "Boss! They're converging. You've got less than 30 seconds. Ye Joon nodded almost imperceptibly. He and Patricia had one shot, one precise, razor-thin window to neutralize the device and survive the storm that threatened to consume not only the warehouse but the entire city infrastructure. He took a deep breath, centering himself, preparing for audacity beyond reckoning. Then came the unexpected twist. From above, a shadow dropped, landing silently behind Cu. The assailant's movements were precise, fluid, and deadly. Ye Joon's instincts screamed. They had a third player, someone operating outside the expected variables. The battlefield had shifted again, unpredictable and merciless. "Patricia!" Ye Joon shouted, lunging to redirect her as a swinging chain nearly decapitated anyone in its path. She twisted, narrowly avoiding the strike, and simultaneously disabled part of the electronic lock with deft precision. The microchip pulsed violently in response, and the warehouse hummed with electrical energy. Sparks flew from malfunctioning equipment, chains swung like lethal pendulums, and every step became a calculated negotiation with death. Patricia's eyes met Ye Joon's, fierce and unwavering. "Almost there," she whispered, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Suddenly, the door to the control room burst open. Cu and the third figure surged forward with lethal synchronization. Ye Joon's reflexes were instantaneous. He intercepted the first strike, redirecting momentum, while Patricia countered the second. Dukwon and Hakuin flanked the remaining attackers, creating a temporary stalemate, but the tension was unsustainable. Then the ultimate twist struck. The microchip emitted a high-pitched pulse that wasn't just audible, It affected machinery, electronics, and even human perception. Lights flickered, floors vibrated, and the warehouse itself seemed to become an active participant in the chaos. Ye Joon realized in a jarring instant, the microchip wasn't just a weapon. It was a conductor of chaos, amplifying fear, adrenaline, and human error. Patricia's hands moved faster. Ye Joon, if we don't act now, it'll trigger everything. He nodded. On my mark. If you're on the edge of your seat, smash that like button, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. The story's about to explode, and you don't want to miss it. Ye Joon leaped toward the device, intercepting another assailant mid-swing, while Patricia dove for the control panel. Sparks flew around them, chains cracked, and the building groaned under the strain of the storm outside and the electrical surge within. The microchip's pulse intensified, almost alive, responding to every motion, every vibration, every heartbeat in the room. Then came the betrayal Ye Joon hadn't anticipated. Dukwon froze, hesitation flickering across his eyes. For a fraction of a second, the man who had always been loyal was unsure, and in that instant, the microchip's secondary device pulsed violently, revealing a hidden override. The city-wide threat wasn't neutralized. It had been primed, awaiting activation by someone inside their ranks. Dukwon! Ye Joon roared, and the man snapped out of his hesitation, rushing to assist, but the microchip's feedback had already begun a chain reaction. Machinery exploded, sparks rained, and the floor above began to collapse in jagged, lethal shards. Patricia shouted over the storm. Ye Joon, the control room isn't enough. The override is remote. Someone inside is betraying us. And then came the final heart-stopping twist. The hidden mastermind revealed themselves, stepping from the shadows, a figure Ye Joon had never expected. Calm, deliberate, and terrifyingly brilliant, the antagonist smiled. You've done well surviving this far. But the real game begins now. She is the key, and if you fail, everything burns. Ye Joon's gaze met Patricia's. She nodded, defiance in her eyes, and together, they prepared for the next move. An audacious, dangerous leap that could either save the city or condemn them all. Ye Joon's pulse pounded like a drum in his ears. The floor beneath them groaned and cracked, each splintered beam threatening to collapse entirely. Sparks rained down, raining a deadly hail of electricity and fire. Patricia's grip on his arm was unyielding. Her eyes locked on the control panel that held the fate of Seoul. You ready? Ye Joon muttered, his voice a low growl, sharp with tension and focus. She gave a brief nod, her hand poised over the final override. On 3. The hidden mastermind's shadow shifted. The figure stepped closer, hands raised, almost theatrical, almost mocking. Do you truly understand what you're about to do, Ye Joon? One wrong move and Seoul will burn. Every connection, every street, every life. It all ends. Are you willing to gamble everything? Ye Joon's mind looped frantically, calculating, anticipating, strategizing, but the truth struck him with violent clarity. There was no guarantee, no certainty, no safe path. Only audacity, instinct, and trust. 3. Patricia pressed the final sequence. Lights flickered violently, sparks arced from panels, and the microchip emitted a high-pitched wail, a signal that resonated through the warehouse, through the city, and through the very air around them. The hidden mastermind cursed, their confidence cracking for the first time, as the device's control shifted, destabilized by Patricia's audacity and skill. Chains swung violently as the warehouse shook. A steel beam above groaned, threatening to fall, and Ye Joon reacted instinctively, pushing Patricia out of the way. Debris rained down, splintering the ground, but she twisted, landing with surprising agility, ready to counter the next threat. Hakuin shouted behind him. Boss! The override is working. But the system is unstable. Ye Joon glanced at the pulsing microchip, realizing the horrifying truth. The device wasn't merely a weapon. It was a conduit, capable of collapsing multiple city systems simultaneously. Even as Patricia neutralized the main override, secondary failsafes began to trigger. Seoul itself was teetering on the edge of disaster. Siu lunged, trying to stop them, but Dukwon intercepted, creating a brief stalemate. The hidden mastermind's focus flickered, eyes narrowing as they realized their plan was unraveling in real time. Then came the final twist, the one Ye Joon had not anticipated. The microchip pulsed violently, but instead of detonating or triggering chaos, it projected a holographic message. A distorted, electronic voice filled the warehouse. Ye Joon. Patricia, congratulations. You have survived the first test. But the game is far from over. Seoul is only the beginning. The real challenge is coming. The words struck like a blade. The mastermind wasn't here merely to destroy. They were testing, probing, manipulating, creating chaos to mold both Ye Joon and Patricia into players in something far larger, far deadlier. Ye Joon's gaze met Patricia's. They're not done, he said grimly, voice low but resolute. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line, tension coiled in her body. Then we keep moving. One step ahead. That's all we can do. The warehouse groaned again, chains clattering, sparks flying. The floor beneath their feet began to collapse entirely. Ye Joon grabbed Patricia, leaping toward the only remaining support beam. They swung across, narrowly avoiding a cascade of falling debris. As they landed, the final words of the mastermind echoed through the storm. Ye Joon, your choices end here. But remember, she is everything. Lose her, and you lose it all. Ye Joon froze. Patricia's eyes met his, fierce, unwavering, and full of challenge. They both knew the truth. The storm wasn't just outside. It was in the city, in their enemies, in their choices, and most dangerously, in the uncharted territory of trust and desire that had bound them together. Lightning split the sky outside, illuminating the shattered warehouse. Sparks hissed from twisted metal, chains swung violently in erratic arcs, and somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail, a city reacting to the invisible chaos that had been unleashed. Then the screen went dark, only the faint pulse of the microchip echoing ominously. Ye Joon turned to Patricia, voice low but urgent. We survived for now. But the real mastermind, they're not done. And I have a feeling they're closer than we think. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Then we prepare. And next time we strike first. The final pulse of the microchip surged violently as the holographic message returned, faint but chilling. Part 2 begins soon. If you're on the edge of your seat, comment Part 2. Right now if you want to see how Ye Joon and Patricia confront the real mastermind, and make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss a single moment of the chaos.